Totally. Yeah. 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 Hey, I'm Brandon Williams from Eagle County Government in Colorado, and welcome to this week's Intentionally Left Blank.
Hey everyone, it's Lilo with the Governor's Office of Information Technology for the state of Colorado. And yeah, we're back at it again. Chatting with Brandon today. We're going to be going over a topic that I think is going to be pretty interesting, and I think we've got a pretty unique spin on it. So yeah, let's get into it.
All right, let me get my... So it was funny when I started to gather my things and come back here so we could film today. My daughter stopped me and she goes, "Oh, are you doing your thing with Lilo?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Who are you interviewing this week?" And I said, "I'm not. It's just Lilo and I jumping on." And she goes, "Oh, so you're interviewing each other?" I thought, yeah. I mean, I guess that, but it kind of made me think. You know, it was funny. We originally got into this because we sat in the same room for literally 5 years. We would go home and sleep at night, sometimes late at night, but we sat in the same room. And really all of that time, since we're both liberal arts majors who somehow stumbled into technology and found ourselves kind of like going to Denny's, right? Do you ever leave the house to intend to end up there? No, you just you're at Denny's, you're like, damn, how did I get there? This is really good. And so a large part of that time, because we were a new team at the state of Colorado and we had, you know, the innovation or the Google team or digital transformation officers, and there wasn't any roadmap. And I think as a result of us being kind of liberal arts, you know, communications and history sitting around, we talked about what the concept of things like digital transformation and innovation really were. And I think it's been interesting over the last several years to watch how it's evolved. And, you know, to me, we even made fun of it. I mean, we called it the buzzword group, or we called it,
yes.
We knew that it was not a joke, but that the concept was really applying a complex kind of understanding to something that was really fundamental and basic and quite analog, which is we're all trying to do stuff better. And I guess if I step back and I look at digital transformation and what that actually means to me, you know, having been in government and kind of led transformation programs, it really comes down to focusing on the boring, automating the mundane. It's really funny when you step back, is that it's not about big projects. We get trapped in that because those are the kinds of stories that we tell or focus on, and sometimes you watch transformation programs become nothing but special projects programs where it's just one cool shiny object after another. And I guess our approach, you know, has always been, and it was good that we agreed on this because it would have been really uncomfortable with the sheer amount of hours sitting in the same room. But it's always been that kind of like you've reached digital transformation, you've reached your digital transformation kind of journey in your organization when you start talking about it and people immediately bomb out because it's so boring.
Yes.
You know, you can talk about the cool transportation project, the cool public health project, how we're innovating using mobile first strategy. Really, you know, in our experience, it's always come down to, well, the true story of transformation has been that as we've watched the last quarter over quarter growth of the adoption of Google Sheets, and also watched the volumetric comparisons of people within and outside of the departments in terms of use of comments going back and forth, and the lag time between when stuff is being published, of literally every single minor small thing that happens in government. That's it. I mean, that to me is the real transformation. It's focusing on the just tedious and the boring. But that's always been at least my take on where digital transformation truly is found.
Yeah, and I mean, I would totally agree. And yeah, going back 5 years, or not even 5 years, but going back to when we were in that same room together, I mean, yeah, we did totally make fun of digital transformation as kind of like the shiny object thing, or like the flavor of the day kind of situation. Right. But I mean, it was never meant, like when we were doing it, it was never intended to be a land grab. It was never intended to be like, well, what can we get an article written about us today on? It was always about, like, we had this end goal, which was not even a technology goal. It was like, how do we get people used to using Google? Like, how do we get people comfortable inside of Google? It wasn't like, how do we deploy Google into more places? It was like, we got these people who've been at the state or whatever for X number of years, potentially decades, who are used to a certain way of doing things.
Right.
How do we get them into Google? Right? Like, it was never that Google didn't work for something, or it was never that we didn't have enough computers. It was always like, well, how do we just help people be better for themselves in Google?
And sometimes, I remember one time distinctly when we were sitting in a room with a department that was not enthusiastic about change and change management. And I remember we sat there and said, hey, look, we're willing to do the training, but if you'd really just prefer us to sit in the lobby in the morning when people come in and when people are leaving, just so you can scowl at us, if that makes it easier, we're willing to do that.
Yeah.
And I remember that did change at least the conversation, but sometimes it was that transformation was really just saying, look, we're bringing change and options to you, and if you need to be mad at us about it, that's okay. We got thick skin. We'll do it.
Yeah.
Let's get past that and focus on helping your people be more efficient.
Like, if this is more cathartic for you to just come in and, like, give us the stank eye on your way into the office, great, we'll do that, and then we'll come help you figure out what to do once you're logged in.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it was those moments that I think really kind of led to that actual transformation, right? Because then, personally, in my own opinion, I feel like that a lot of folks confuse digital transformation with innovation, right? Like, in my mind, those are two separate things, right? Like,
I think you're right.
You can have innovation, but if you don't have the digital transformation side, then it's not going to fly.
Right.
And you can also do digital transformation without necessarily having to be completely innovative.
Yes.
Right? So I think that's kind of where a lot of that stuff gets confused, and I think we relied very heavily on the transformation side, where it was like,
that's a great
that could be considered innovative and is considered innovative, but no one's going to use it.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, when I come to kind of that dichotomy between innovation and transformation, innovation was rethinking a workflow process using a brand new tool that opened up new engagement strategies, whether it was like forms or integration into social, and being able to kind of be on that cutting edge of dynamic and rethinking it. And transformation to me was always the more important. And it was really the nitty gritty of sitting down. I mean, there is no way to make people fall asleep faster than to point out the advantages of applying the National Association of State Procurement Officer guidelines around cost avoidance and how many multiple years that can carry over, and how to exactly calculate the offset of in-kind services for things when you're either stepping back from contracts or not pursuing contracts because of that. But that was the real innovation, and it only came about from doing the basic building blocks that were just boring. I mean, the training, and it was funny too. The training was always that basic building. Just get the skill set to a point where you can function, or at least get people to a point where they understand enough of the language to ask a question of how do I, or is it possible?
Exactly.
And that's when it flipped over into the innovation and the really exciting, kind of more flashy stuff. But it was really, it's that foundation of the boring transformation where we focused on. And so I think, if I was coming back and if you got to set the clock back 10 years and talk to yourself about what your digital transformation journey, what you should focus on, and I think there are tons of different people. I mean, people are doing transformation that don't even understand that that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
We were just lucky that somebody paid us to sit in and actually kind of create a program around it. But I think if I step back and look, there were three things that I would tell younger Brandon to focus on. And this was all accumulated via heavy scarring. I think one, first and foremost, is focus on communications. When our team was a communications marketing person, a sociologist, and a history major. All hacks, all people that just kind of stumbled into technology by accident. And I think that was super powerful in terms of, one, having liberal arts in IT from a position of empathy, from a position of considering alternative scenarios and downstream impact in thinking big about these questions of what is transformation, what is the real value there, not just the mechanics of turning wrenches or flipping on new systems. I think the communications element played a role on the emotional intelligence, empathy front, as well as in the storytelling that was necessary to take those very boring transformation elements and make those into something that was infographable or understandable. Because a lot of it is storytelling. It's relating to people and kind of making that, the actual, I guess, digital part of it less apparent and making the actual focus on the people and just removing barriers and trying to make life easier. And I think if I had to spend money again, I think we're very lucky to have built a team that was built of liberal arts majors because of that communications.
Totally agree.
It also helped in that, the adopting new tools primarily for the purpose of storytelling, like through social and through presentations and stuff. I think the second thing would be just double down on the boring, hone in on it.
Yes.
Everything that you look at in your to-do list of transformation and the stuff that you look at and kind of sag, you're like, I really teaching another class on sheets and formulas. Double down on it. That was always the impetus and the catalyst for the much greater things. It was the Sheets 101 classes that got finance people into a room who then suddenly told you about some insane process that they use that's paper and yellow sticky based, where you have to move it from the right corner to the left corner in order to know that it's been processed. And you're like, what? How do people live like? How
do you do this?
How do you go through? It was always the boring, the stuff that people didn't want to do, the training, the focusing on the metrics that just weren't that exciting, like quarter-over-quarter growth, and really trying to drive at that kind of holy grail around an ROI of collaboration, which I don't know that if anybody watching has ever come up with a formula where you can sit down and actually calculate the ROI of collaboration itself. What is the dollar value associated with, in a previous process, somebody used a document, they created multiple copies, they shared it with 40 different partners, they got comments and input back. You then some poor soul has to sit there and hammer through all of those comments to flatten them and then send out a second draft. And then I don't know what that is. And we've tried. We tried through the NASPO guidelines. It was always in that kind of storytelling, but driving at that amorphous concept of ROI and collaboration and how to tell the story of that, and it always came back to those boring Sheets 101 training.
Yep.
Because that opened the door for the questions from non-technical people to say, I didn't know it could do that. Can it also do this? Because this is my pain point.
Yes.
And so, focus on the boring and maybe focus on pain. That sounds super encouraging. This is a field that people want to get into.
Right.
It's going to be boring and painful. And what you want to do is hone in on both of those.
Just
and then,
really hold on to the two of those
really
things together.
Grasp on when you're bored and in pain, when you know you're in the zone. I guess that leads to kind of the third one, which was real change is in a million small things that add up. It's not that one project that you happen to get funding for that is a unique technology. It really can't be fit because it was customized to hell, and it's really, what was the system? I love the system that we had for customer service that had it had been customized to the point where it actually had a button on it that said create problem. And I loved that. I loved the idea that you could just sit down and it had just been, it had been customized so much that you could sit down and say, well, today's the day.
Yep.
Bang! Create problem. We're in. Because usually that stuff just happens organically. We just found out about it. But the idea you could schedule it, that was awesome. But I think, it comes down to just those millions of little things from people that you would never expect to be using technology to solve. Nurse family practitioners, in-field health inspectors, that those creative sparks of how could I, do this with the technology, but it always came from, those basic trainings and just that engagement and focusing on the process of learning a new technology grows so much more.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on all those points because we experienced it all, right? Where it's like we had to do the storytelling, we had to do the training, which then involved a lot of the storytelling. We were like, oh, well, did you know that XYZ agency did it this way using these tools? And I'll show you how to do it. And then, exactly. And all that stuff. So I think my 3 points all kind of revolve around similar themes. So the first one that I'll reiterate too is training, right? So making sure that people know how to use the tool, I think is going to lead to really great transformation, like you were talking about, where it's like, and it also leans back on that dichotomy of transformation and innovation. Like if you don't know what your tools do, then you're not going to touch it to do anything bigger. Right. Like Sheets is the classic example, right? Because Sheets is so big and so gnarly that if you don't know what it can do, then you're not even going to touch it.
Right.
Like, especially if you're a fiscal person or a finance person, you're like, well, I've been using Excel for at least 47 years of my 60-year career. But if you show them the equivalencies and then how to take that a step further in Sheets, that's when they're like, oh, great. Well, then let's do it in Sheets and, figure out how to go from there. So I think training is like super key in a lot of that stuff. The second point is using what you have. So I think another common misconception of digital transformation is that like the best way to transform something is to throw money at it, but you don't have to. You could like you have tools already. It's like if you walk into like a construction site and you already have like 3 hammers, but someone's like, we need to hammer this other thing. You're like, well, gotta buy a new hammer. It's like, do you know? You got 3. Right, that one's pretty shiny. You should probably use that one. Right.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I think back, we never had a budget outside of just paying for the platform.
No,
we had our staff, 3 staff, and money enough each year to basically re-up, and that was it. There was no budget for additional training. There was no budget for third-party assistance. There was no budget for. But a collaborative platform lends itself to that kind of, we learned it because we had to. We didn't have a choice then to build. But I think you're exactly right. Maybe, okay, so if you're getting into this field, you want to focus on the boring and the tedious. You want to double down on the pain, and you want to really try and do that with no resources, like no help. And that I think is kind of the cauldron chemicals that are necessary to really do government change.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, you have to go, like, the easiest way to do it is to go in expecting that you have no money to play with.
Give nothing, and maybe less than you expected.
Exactly. Right. Like, you can't even afford the supplies for the office.
That's right. You're going to have to learn how to write handwriting on Google Keep because you can't buy pencils. So,
exactly. You got a finger and you got a phone because you brought the phone with you.
Yeah, that's right. Better trust in the security parameters around using that phone because that's what you got.
Right. That's all you got for now.
MDM, better learn it. Yeah.
Right. Better make sure you install that device policy because you're going to need it.
You're going to need that one. Is your phone cracked? Well, maybe you could do split screen on it. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, absolutely. Using the tools that you have at your disposal, because that's what's going to make you really, really knowledgeable about what you can do in the future. And then also, like, being able to come back and flip it around, like, well, your situation's a little unique, but like we've seen it kind of function in this capacity, and so let's flip it around a little bit more. And that's where you kind of get like that whole creative. You need to get to point D, but instead of going A, B, C, you go A, J, 17, and then Alpha Centauri, and then you come back to D.
Yeah, that's right. It's like the first time you discovered Velcro, right? I mean, it's like, that's pretty cool. That hooks together. I wonder if I could do a poster on the. Oh my God.
And
then all of a sudden, like, all of your forks are like stuck to the wall. If your backpack has a removable, water bottle, you don't even use the thing anymore because you can rip it off. That was good.
Oh, needed Velcro.
But it's
for your
true.
headphones.
That's exactly. It's a trans. Yeah. It's the. You could do that. Everything must be Velcroed.
Exactly. That's
and
exactly
labeled.
It. And labeled, right? Oh man, awesome. And then the last point, point number 3, is that the technology itself should become invisible, right? Like you should never have to come in and wonder where the start button is, or where the plus button is, or how to compose an email. Like that should just become intuitive to the point where you just know where stuff is, and you can just kind of function on it and go. So I think that's where like the real kind of transformation lives. Like that's your end goal, is when you can come in and you know exactly where everything lives and you can just fire it off like that. That's where the real transformation is.
But it's cool that you mentioned that about the transformation and the technology being secondary. You get these every once in a while. If you're involved in these projects, there's these times where it pops up and you're like, whoa, hey, we've actually moved. A couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine here at Eagle and I were working on something, and it was a policy to be able that we needed to tell staff about. And we were in a group chat. We then decided to take it offline in a one-on-one chat so we can dive on it. We then ended up creating a Google document, throwing down a few bullets. Then I needed to put it up on the resources Google site. So I copied, pasted, dropped it into the Google site. And then I flipped around and made a quick post on our currents community about it. That was a span of about 15 minutes from inception to end. And not at one point in time did either of us even blink that we had used, 6 or 7 tools in a sequence, flowing between those to produce the result of getting something up on a social. And I think that kind of stuff is, if you're wondering how is my transformation going, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Have you had those kinds of moments where you've been able, with staff you would have never predicted you would have that type of interaction with, just accomplish something seamlessly and not thought about it?
Yeah.
And that only comes from those basic building blocks, the question and answers, focusing on the boring, getting leadership and change management involved, all for that magic moment where in 15 minutes you can flow through those tools and get something as routine as an internal policy circulated.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. It's that initial commitment to being glared at, which leads to this
Right.
totally seamless flow where you go from idea to implementation through like literally second-hand steps, right?
That's right.
So yeah,
We don't put these in any of the job descriptions. Again,
No, we really don't.
boring, tedious, those are the most important, painful, you're going to get scowled at.
Right.
Yeah, it
in
sounds
an
super
interview-
exciting. Oh, and
Yeah, in your interview, it should be
no
like, so
resources
what's your...
to dig out of that hole.
Yes. No resources, no dollars. Yeah, interviews should be like, so what's your tolerance for pain?
Yeah, exactly.
Have you ever been glared at for longer than 5 seconds?
Would you be comfortable asking people to glare at you in a public setting? How comfortable are you with total embarrassment?
Right.
Not remembering all of the formulas in a training class. Yeah.
Totally.
That sounds exciting. Sign me up. I'm in.
Right. Where do
Yeah.
can I please join this?
Right. And the payback for all of it is going to be this 15-minute window where you and somebody who's not technical put out 3 bullets to your staff, and you're going to go, all right, hey, we did something here. Yeah. So there's no just like mega reward or like press release on, the cool project and all that kind of stuff. No. Yeah. Yeah. It's totally worth it. It's totally worth it to make government better.
Agreed.
It is. It's awesome. Wouldn't change a thing.
Nope.
So
I would do it all over again in a heartbeat.
hey, thanks for joining us this week on Intentionally Left Blank and a rather rambly and fun one.
Yeah, thanks so much for watching this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed it. And then the usual situation, right? If you have situations like these or you have stories that you want to share, drop them in the comments below. Also join us in the public sector community where you can have comments there. And I mean, we would love to hear your stories too about your digital transformation experiences and pathways and all that stuff. And see us there. And until next time, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
Again, we're
Lilo talked about this and